Welcome to the Middlesex Moments radio show. I'm Dr. Anna Wasesha, president of Middlesex Community College, located right here in Middletown, Connecticut. And today my guests are Dan Osborne and Fran Ludwig, who are associated in different ways, but strategically important ways, with Gilead. And so Dan is the executive director and Fran is the chair of the board that oversees everything that goes on with Gilead. And before the show started, we were talking a little bit about the responsibilities that go with being a board member. So we might touch on that a little bit later in the show. But first of all, let's just introduce Gilead. So Dan, would you tell us what Gilead does? And
Sure.
Who Gilead is?
Sure, and thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm happy to have you. And also, I'd love to know what, Gilead is a reference, right? It's a biblical reference, right? So Can you start there?
It is. Sure. So Gilead Community Services was founded in 1968. It was actually a project of Wesleyan University. It was a graduate studies project where they had identified that folks were coming out of state hospitals like Connecticut Valley Hospital and weren't doing well in the community. And so more supports were needed. So they were able to convince the university to donate a home, which we still have, which we still use and operate a group home out of on High Street in Middletown. And they started providing really just side-by-side care with students living with individuals who had been discharged. And yeah, they named it Gilead. My understanding, and a lot of this has been passed down, so this is sort of the oral tradition of Gilead Community Services, but there was a city in Israel in Old Testament times called Gilead, and there was a healing ointment that was derived from that location. And so it was called the Balm of Gilead. And people would go there to get healing for a variety of medical ailments. And that's sort of the origin of, the connection to mental health is Gilead is a place of healing. It's a place to come and to get well from a mental health condition. So we've been providing mental health services ever since.
That's a great story. And honestly, I'm sure Wesleyan's handprint and fingerprints and footprints are all over Middletown. But I had no idea that it started out as a graduate studies project. So today, what do you do? How would you describe the scope of services?
Yeah, so we've grown from that one program, an agency of one program providing care to 8 or 9 people, to an agency of about 14 programs that serves somewhere between 650 and 700 individuals each year, and currently employs about 240 staff members. So we've gotten much larger than the early days, but the focus is the same. It's mental health recovery services. We do intensive outpatient services where we're outreaching to folks in their homes, and we do a large amount of residential supports as well.
And for all ages?
Yeah, we really specialize in adult services, and we do have some programming for youth, specifically residential programming for youth, starting at age 13.
And Fran, how did you get involved with Gilead?
I got involved 6 years ago when my son began receiving services from Gilead. At that time, Dan was director of the program that Ben was admitted to, and I was immediately impressed with the quality of care that he was getting, and gradually became more and more sort of involved with activities at Gilead and wound up on the board 5 years ago.
So I imagine, like any intelligent organization, you were helping to build the network of support for Gilead by sort of encouraging volunteerism on the parts of the family members. I mean, it sounds like you found a way into Gilead to be able to help too, and now a very strategic way as chair of the board.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. We have a wonderful development director who met me when I was donating some clothes early on and got together with me and
said, I think I have a place for you. That's perfect. But we have to take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk some more about the importance of the work that Gilead is doing. We'll be back. We're back, and today I'm talking with Fran Ludwig, who's the chair of the board of Gilead, and you pronounce it Gilead, right? Do you say that?
Gilead.
I think. Do you say Gilead? Because you have this beautiful lilting South Carolina accent. I can't. I want you to talk some more so I can just bathe in it. I just love it. I learned how to talk in Louisville, Kentucky, but I was only 5, 6, 7, and then my family moved to St. Louis, but it just sounds like home. I just love it. So we'll let you talk a lot during this program. And Dan Osborne, who did you grow up in Connecticut? So you have a Connecticutan accent, which it doesn't have any of the lilt in it. So you're lucky because you get to work with Fran and hear all this great sound and music and the voice. So why don't we talk a little bit about the kinds of issues and mental health issues that you work with the clients who are benefiting from Gilead services, and what you see as the trends in treatment, and what can ordinary citizens do as well as organizations like Gilead to embrace the people with mental health issues and be sure that we do the best we can for those individuals and for all of us, because it all in the end goes to the quality of life and the kind of society we want to be.
Yeah, that'd be great. One of the things that we're very proud of at Gilead is the fact that we're able to provide a continuum of care. So we don't just have one specialty, and that's, if you need this specific type of treatment, come to Gilead. If you need everything else, you got to go to these other places. So when someone's in significant need of high intensive services like residential programming, let's say they're transitioning out of a hospital or maybe going through a particularly difficult time in their life with their illness, we have those physical locations that they can come and live and receive 24/7 care. So we have several programs like that. As the person is able to improve and have greater independence through the development of skills, we have the types of programs that can wrap around them in an apartment setting or in their own living situation, wherever that may be, their own home, living with family, or what have you. And then when the person is no longer even needing those kinds of services and simply needs to see a psychiatrist on a regular basis or a therapist, we can transition because we have a fully functioning outpatient clinic here in Middletown to provide those services. So the fact that we're able to wrap around the person throughout sort of the course of their recovery is a huge benefit, both for them and for us, because it allows us to be consistent in the care from one point in their life, through the recovery process. In terms of positive trends, things that are going on, I think one of the things that excites us is the amount of focus on community involvement and integration in the community. There was a time, years ago when I think as a society we were sort of washing our hands of the mental health issues in our world, and I think we've come a long way. We don't create special areas, we don't create special barbershops, special facilities. We emphasize integration into the community. So we believe that the people we're serving are really no different than you or I. In fact, they might be you or I. Mm-hmm. And it's all about integrating services and support with what the community already has to offer.
Yeah, I think as a society, we've got to really get over this idea of stigmatizing different groups of people, because as you're saying that, I'm thinking also anyone who's served time in prison also experiences the same kind of stigma. Yeah. And the solution is to integrate them and to understand they're just like you and me. In fact, it could just be you and me. Yeah. Right. So when you think about all the work that Gilead is doing, Fran, what do you feel like the strongest about or feel most excited about in terms of effectiveness?
Well, I'll pick up on Dan's point about getting our clients into the community. There was a time when Gilead worked very hard to be invisible so that nobody in the community knew we were there. And, there was this whole emphasis on protecting the privacy of clients, that mental illness was sort of not to be seen or talked about. And, I'm really excited to see that beginning to change. It's changing slowly, but I think, we are beginning to recognize that mental illness is just one form of illness like any other form of illness. That the brain is part of the body, and a disorder of the brain is just as legitimate as a disorder of the heart or the kidneys or the lungs or anything else. And it's not something to be ashamed of. I think there's still sort of a pervasive attitude that if you're depressed or anxious, that it's your own fault, that you need to kind of get hold of yourself and get yourself straightened out. Not that this is the source of an illness, or if you have problems with substance abuse, that you are morally weak or something like that. So, I think the fact that we are beginning to acknowledge that these are legitimate illnesses, that they deserve the same level of support that we give to other medical issues, is a really important trend, and one that I would like to see us encourage and accelerate.
So I'm thinking about another element of that what you're talking about, which is that you can get over a mental illness. Would you say that's the case?
I would say in many cases, mental illness can be treated or managed in a way that allows people to function in society just as you could with a heart condition or
Right.
diabetes, or maybe it doesn't go away, but you manage it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But as you said, your son had been involved as a client at Gilead,
Right.
And so you obviously had a very close-up look at what services were available and what could help him. And so what you've done as a result, it really is volunteer all your time and energy sharing this board. So what would you say to other people who are wondering because I think mental illness touches almost every family.
The statistics say 1 in 5, so it would be hard not to have somebody that you know or love
right.
be impacted in some way by mental illness.
And just so for those of us who are kind of lay people in the field, how can we help? So in Middletown, for example, what could somebody do to help the cause of Gilead or to help the cause of mentally ill people?
Well, there are a variety of things. One is to volunteer your time or your financial support for mental illness. Dan is now teaching mental health first aid, so that just like you would take a CPR course, so you would know what to do in an emergency if somebody had a medical emergency. Mental health first aid can give you tools to know what to do if you suspect or realize that someone is experiencing a mental health crisis. So, it's more knowing how to calm them down and connect them with services that are appropriate rather than for you to be the therapist or the psychiatrist. But there are things like that we can do, that can make a difference.
Mm-hmm. So I think you've offered this program, the mental health first aid program here at Middlesex, right?
We have.
So what is that program? What's in there that you're talking about?
Yeah, so it's an 8-hour course, and it certifies the person in mental health first aid, just like Fran was saying, like you would get a certification in first aid or CPR, and it's a few things. Part of it is just information. It's understanding the statistics around mental health conditions, whether it's schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety. How many people experience it? What are some of the common symptoms that someone who's experiencing one of those disorders would have? And what are some effective strategies that you can use to support a person who's experiencing those symptoms? The whole program is based around sort of a mnemonic, which is algae, that I can't fully give away, or I'd have to have you pay for the course. But basically, the mnemonic algae helps the person who's taken mental health first aid walk through what to do and what steps to take if they're working with someone who happens to have a mental health condition. It could be in the workplace, could be a family member, it could be in a mental health treatment environment. But the training is really geared toward all of us, toward lay people and professionals alike. It does demystify certain things around mental health. It takes some things that society has, I think, bought into that aren't true, some myths, and debunks them quite a bit with data. And so it's a great, well-rounded educational tool. I think people definitely walk out of the training with a different perspective on mental health than they did, and some data to back it up.
It sounds like it was a really valuable program from what I've heard from my colleagues. But algae, which you can't actually divulge, but is it algae like what grows on a lake?
It's ALGEE.
Okay, so now you're going to have people misspelling the word from now until
That's
the
right.
end of time.
That's right, and it's actually algae is a koala bear that comes with us to all the trainings. So he's our marsupial friend who helps teach the mental health first aid skills.
How did you learn about this? How did you become a teacher of this?
The National Council puts out mental health first aid, so it's a national model, and their goal is for there to be as many individuals across the country trained in mental health first aid as there are in general first aid. So they have a very lofty goal, and they're state by state trying to train up a workforce of instructors to be able to get that out there and make it available. So it's something that Gilead became aware of as it had been presented in a variety of formats throughout the state, and felt like it was something we wanted to be involved in. It's something we needed to be able to offer to the general public, to the community.
So how do you had talked, Fran, about needing to kind of elevate the profile of the mentally ill and certainly the profile of Gilead. So when we're going to have to take a break, but when we come back, let's talk about the various ways that you have raised your profile. And this first aid program seems like a great one, because I can't imagine an organization that wouldn't benefit from it. Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
So we'll be right back after this message. Well, we're back to the Middlesex Moments radio show, and today Fran Ludwig and Dan Osborne are talking with us about Gilead, and we're talking about mental health. And one of my questions, my driving questions, is always, what can the public do, because I think the public is always impacted by issues of mental health as they are by many, many other issues. We can self-educate a great deal. But Gilead has a really special way of doing this, and that is through your community conversations. And so first of all, what are your community conversations? What have you learned from the ones you've had? And how, in what way would that be one way to start learning more about mental health?
Yeah, so Gilead has put on 3 large community forums, community conversations since last May. So we had one last May, we had one in January of this year, and then we just had one last month in May. And the format that we've used has been a panel discussion. So we've had anywhere from between 125 to 225 people at these events.
That's huge.
Yeah, they've been great, really well attended, which tells us that something we thought we already knew, which is that people in the community really are interested and do care about this topic and want to learn more. So the panel discussion, or the panel format, which Fran has been a part of, she was a panelist in the first event, has been so important because it allows folks to hear and interact with people who have experienced mental health from a variety of perspectives, people who have gone through it themselves, people who have had loved ones that have gone through an experience with a mental health disorder, and professionals. So it's really a mixture of people who've had different types of experiences. Answering questions from the audience is really the format. So it sounds simple, but it ends up being really dynamic because the community comes with questions, folks come with questions that they don't know the answers to, and they're able to hear directly from people who've experienced it themselves. And I think for me, one of the most powerful things, and particularly having done some of the moderating over the past 2 of these events, is to see the individuals who are on the panel that for that night become the face of mental illness for that audience. It's not the people that they're expecting. It's a 23-year-old good-looking guy who looks like you'd look at him and say he can have all the success in the world that he wants, well-spoken, and yet has battled substance abuse in ways that are shocking, I think, to folks. So it's when you start expanding the way you think about who it is that experiences mental health or substance abuse issues, it really changes how and why you might get involved to support those things.
What were some of the themes that you heard among the questions of those conversations?
Well, we get a lot of people to the events who have experienced mental health disorders of some kind themselves, or have been maybe part of a family that has been affected. So some of them are kind of self-help questions. What do you do if, or how do you respond when? Others are just purely informational. How many people does this affect? To the professionals, what are some of the best treatments? What are some of the enhancements in the field that are making a difference? So it really does kind of run the gamut.
So is there still sort of a tension between the using psychopharmacology to address mental health issues versus the sort of talk therapy and counseling side? Or give me a read on that in 2015. I don't stay current with that, and it seems like those are the kind of 2 polar opposites of what you do with mental health.
I think from my experience it's clearly both. It's not either one alone usually isn't sufficient to manage the illness, but together they can be powerful.
So, and I assume people want to know about that, want to know whether or not, people can be cured by taking a pill. Probably not. Or whether, like any kind of change in lifestyle, there's a whole set of changing paradigms and, cognitive rearrangement that you do in order to try to stay balanced and healthy.
Right. And in my experience, it takes both. Both are crucial pieces. I don't know, Dan. I mean,
yeah, integrating all of the elements of recovery, part of which can be through medication. And in the panel discussions, there's been some great dialogue around, some of the most effective treatments and how medicines have come a long way. The side effects are much less impactful than they used to be. And so the trade-off of what someone is, making between mental wellness and all the other side effects has become lessened. Talk therapy, certainly, cognitive behavioral therapy, there has been advances in the therapy world as well, where we've seen significant improvement in, the effectiveness of that treatment. But then there's a lot of other things like you're talking about, there's just physical wellness, taking care of yourself, relationships, ways that you can enhance the effectiveness. Recovering from a mental illness is hard work. I mean, it's one thing that we've seen consistently. It really, and we know that the people that we serve, they never raised their hand and said, pick me, I want to have a mental illness. But the reality is, once that is their reality, it is a lot of work to overcome it. But it can be done, and it's being done every day. So when someone comes to us for care and they're ready and wanting to really work on their illness, it's amazing what can happen, both through medication, through therapy, through securing employment, securing housing, all of those little puzzle pieces that really make up what recovery looks like for an individual.
Right, there are so many stressors in life, and increasingly so. So unemployment and poverty and violence in our everyday lives and alienation from authority. I mean, all this the most recent issues around police and communities of color, and so there's and certainly the 6 o'clock news. I mean, there's just enough to keep people kind of in a constant state of anxiety about life. So at least in my world, that's I see so many of those things, and I'm so concerned about them, and concerned about diet and exercise and eliminating recess, and kids not being able to run around and go outside and play. So.
I can add that one of the things that I value so highly about Gilead is this sort of integral approach to treating mental illness. That it's not just one thing, and it's really not just two. I mean, it's much more than just a pill and talk therapy. And there are a broad range of therapies, and for so many people with mental illness, it takes them out of their community life, and just finding a way back into that is, as Dan says, is a lot of work. And so Gilead really looks at the whole person and all those pieces and how to put them together, and looks at what each individual needs. So it's never one size fits all. It's unique for each individual, and I would say that every one of those 700 individuals that Gilead treats has a unique treatment plan. And I know that's certainly been true with my experience, that they've been able to find exactly what was needed for my son, and it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah. So if an individual listening to this program would like to find out about receiving services from Gilead, how would they do? What would they do?
Well, probably the easiest way would be to go on our website, which is www.gileadcs.org. And it lists all the different service types that we offer and contact information to reach out. So they certainly could do that. The other thing that I would say, and we've talked about this a little bit, would be come to an event. I wish I had a date to share, but we will be offering another large community forum, and we try to advertise, on radio and the newspaper, wherever we can. So find an event or find a mental health first aid training and plug yourself in somehow with the information, and then connect from there.
You can like us on Facebook.
Oh, you have a Facebook page too.
We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter, so you can follow us there as well.
And are you actually tweeting?
Well,
from time to time?
I haven't made my first tweet personally, but Gilead does get information out on there, and different activities that we're doing, whether it's legislative advocacy or these different events that we're talking about, community conversations, mental health first aid. We try to get as much information out through social media as we can.
Well, let's we're probably going to be running out of time because this half hour always goes by really quickly. But you have this really wonderful fundraiser event, and funds are very important to keeping the work going. called it's Cuisine for a Cause.
That's correct.
And so briefly, people get together, house parties, and have a dinner at their house, and then they move from the house, so a little bit like a progressive dinner, over to Wesleyan University, at least it has been in the past, where they have dessert, and then there's a silent auction and a live auction, and also an introduction, or maybe a kind of bringing you up to date on an annual report about what you've done with Gilead. Organizing those house parties is a great way to connect with your friends anyway, and to say, here's something really important. Let's do this. Come to my house. You bring this. I'll bring that, and we'll invite two. Each of us each one bring one. So if people are interested in organizing a house party for Cuisine for a Cause, they could probably also go to your website or send somebody an email.
Yep, go to our website. You can contact me or our development director, who is Lucy McMillan. She's her information's up on the website as well. And we would love to have additional hosts. It is our fall event, typically in November. And it's great. I think we get the best of both worlds, because you get the intimate setting of a dinner where you can sit with 10 to 12 folks, one of whom is someone that represents the agency, an employee or a family member that can talk about Gilead. But then you also get the large event where it's just a blast. Tons of really delicious desserts. Plus you've got a live auction. It's just a really, really fun time and raises money for Gilead.
It does. And I always am asking, how can the ordinary person help? Oh, everybody can organize a dinner and then go have fun with Gilead. Okay, so thank you both so much for being here today.
It was a pleasure.
Really appreciate it. And this has been the Middlesex Moments radio show. And if you want to learn more about Middlesex Community College, we're also on the web at mxcc.edu. So take a look at our website, and I hope all of you have a very good day.